The Biden White House marking Transgender Day of Visibility on Easter Sunday, setting off a firestorm of criticism. This year, Trans Visibility Day coincided with Easter, the
how dare they?
holiest day on the Christian calendar, Resurrection Sunday.
Wait, is it? Bro, after Australia, I thought Christmas was the holiest day. The way that Americans fucking treat Christmas versus Easter, bitch. Easter is nowhere near in the top 10 of holy days by American standards. Let me tell you why. Having seen what goes on in Australia, where they have basically a fucking 5-day weekend, where like all the shops are closed. There were literally 2 days where there was no one in the streets. It's a joke. It's basically a joke to say that like Easter is such a holy day in American society. It's not. It comes and goes. Many people don't even recognize that it's happening. I had no idea how much people rode for Easter. Like living in America, I did not even know that people cared about Easter like that. Easter is the cornerstone of the entire fucking religion, man. Brother, I'm telling you right now, I swear to God, Easter is not even in the top 10 most important holidays for Americans. It's not even a holiday. It sucks. It absolutely sucks here, dude. I was genuinely shocked. I was like, all the Americans, we all were in awe when we saw how Australia treats Easter. St. Patrick's Day is a bigger holiday in America than Easter. I'm simply stating that anyone who's freaking out about this Easter shit in America is LARPing. Okay? 100%. Like, it's religious importance. Its religious importance is insignificant in the way that Americans see it, in the way that Americans view it, in the way that Americans celebrate it. Okay? That's my point. You're so dumb. Easter is way more holy for Catholics. People just like Christmas more because they aren't religious or spiritual. Easter is always on a Sunday, so there's no reason for our capitalist lords to give us off. Bro, I'm telling you, go to any, like, I assume any Catholic country that is not America and see how they celebrate Easter, and then you will understand Americans don't give a fuck about Easter at all. Anyway, let's continue.
And while this isn't the first time President Biden and the White House have marked the transgender holiday, it was their most substantive on social media. It's the latest example of what is being described as faith under fire in America. Harris, many are arguing that, to that point, that there's been a...
Yeah, our Christians are so far off from recognizably Christian, and it's yet another indication. America literally is not a Christian nation. America LARPs is a Christian nation. We don't give a fuck about Christianity. We care about capitalism 100%. And for some weird reason, we haven't decided that like Easter is a good capitalist holiday, which is why it comes and goes without much notice or without much importance. Overall, I think that like America's reception of Easter is just like, yeah, okay, it's just another day. Yeah, Halloween is a bigger holiday in America than fucking Easter, dude.
Quote, faith under fire movement for quite some time that ebbing and flowing, sometimes more flagrant than others, but many Christian Americans feel they've been persecuted and it's been out in the open and sort of furthered by this administration in many ways, from Catholics being focused on in the FBI to downplaying by the media of certain events that have happened. And they can't help feeling this is one more nail in the coffin, and a large visible one.
So if a holy day on the Islam calendar had fallen on March 31st, as did the holiest day on the Christian calendar, Easter, would they still have...
It's so funny. They literally have been doing a genocide on aid. What the fuck are you talking about, dumbass? Also, I'm old enough to remember when Saddam Hussein was executed. Saddam Hussein was literally executed on Eid, the holiest day in Islam. That was done on purpose. The idea that like Americans give a fuck about that sort of thing only works in the opposite direction. Remember that. Remember that shit, dude. Get the fuck out of here. Americans literally only care about like holy days for Islam so they can do some fuck shit.
have had Transgender Visibility Day, or would they have observed the day before or the day after? We often will do an observed day before or after the day that it actually falls on. In fact, we do that quite often with Veterans Day. It doesn't always fall on a Friday, and we do it with other days. So I'm just wondering, is Christianity getting, and for that matter, I mean, there are protests in the streets that are anti-Israel. And so is Judaism also getting the same treatment as some of these other religions that the president is being pressed upon by? Look, that Michigan vote mattered. I don't care what he and his people say. And yeah, some of it was about electric vehicles, but that angry Arab Muslim community over his treatment of the Israel-Hamas war is real, and he should wake up to that. And why does that matter? Because I don't think we are all being treated the same. I think he's flexing in one direction, trying to get that vote. And you know what? Who cares so much about Easter? We'll put up this flag. The Easter Bunny is not the symbol of Jesus.
What? Biden did Trans Visibility Day on Easter, not because Easter moves around and it happened to be on the same day, but because he wanted to capitulate to the woke Muslim mob, because the Muslim Arabs love disrespecting the Christians. That's awesome.
But I thought this, as we were talking about this, the children of the National Guard were prohibited from submitting religious Easter egg designs for the 2024 Celebrating National Guard Family art event at the White House this year. This is the New York Post reporting this. So what is that about, that the symbolism of the holiday, particularly, as you pointed out, Tammy, for military families? There was just a whole lot of mess going on. And it would be nice to be led by people in the White House who could kind of clean that up today on Easter Monday, maybe make some sense of that. And it didn't serve the transgender community either to be caught up in the storm of their indecision.
Right. And Morgan, so even if that rule has been in place for quite some time, when you contrast it, or when it's up against the landscape of Biden declaring this day is Transgender Day of Visibility, we're not changing it for observation. That was such a great point about that. How do you speak to the pragmatic way that this administration could have handled this differently?
Well, and I think Harris makes a really good point about where we are in terms of religious observance right now in this country. It's
You guys want to know what I think? I think they forgot. Like, I think legitimately, they just don't give a shit about Trans Day of Visibility at all. And absolutely no one would talk about it if it wasn't for like right-wing framing. And that's it. Today on Transgender Day of Visibility, I have a simple message to all trans Americans. I see you. You were made in the image of God and worthy of respect and dignity. This is so funny. What is even the issue, even if they did it on purpose? Oh, there is no issue at all. I just think it's really funny that they're trying to make like, this is one of those things that is like stupid enough that I know some dumb hogs are going to get very mad, even though it's like very obviously something that they didn't even care about. No, Joe, today is Easter. You would never disrespect any other religion like this. Now watch this ratio. You are made in the image of God. Also, here are some hormones, puberty blockers. Let's chop out those healthy breasts and penises because you were raw. Dude, anti-trans people are so gross. Like, transphobic people are always talking about like trans people in like the weirdest ways possible that I feel like is just normie repellent. They're so perverted. Anyway, it's very, very stupid. Under the community notes for the End Wokeness comment, it says Joe Biden has enabled the genocide in Gaza, disrespecting Muslims. Yeah, I feel like Joe Biden has done much worse to Muslims than he has done to Christians, I think. If we're going to talk about it like that. Wish Biden would actually help trans people? No shot.
It's actually a pivotal moment for all of the Abrahamic faiths. It's the holy month of Ramadan right now.
Yes.
Still, it's Easter. We just finished Purim, and Judaism will be going into Passover soon as well. And I know people on the left watch this and think that we're all being overly sensitive about this. Let me tell you why it's not, because this is one of the fundamental founding principles of our country, to have this religious freedom, to have this religious faith. And whenever you go down a slippery slope of ignoring it or doing as the Atlantic did and declaring wearing the Catholic rosary to be a sign of radicalism or a sign of Christian nationalism. When you go down that slippery slope, where does it get you? It gets you in a place where you are with the Chinese Communist Party, where they have actually edited the Bible.
Anyway, I don't
the
really give
Bible
a shit
that you
about
buy in
community
China
notes. I do
is
think
not
it's
the
funny.
Bible that you get everywhere else in the world. It has been edited by the Chinese Communist Party. And in China, Xi Jinping took pictures of Jesus off the wall in churches and put a picture of himself up. So why are we as Americans so sensitive about this? Because it seems like, oh, this is silly. This is just the ladies on Fox News being, you know, overly dramatic. It's really not. It is a slippery slope. If we don't do everything we can to protect religious freedom around the world, and by the way, they never filled that position, to my knowledge, at the State Department that Mike Pompeo put in place to make sure that we were advocating for religious freedom around the world. When you don't fight for it here, it's a slippery slope to end up where you are in China.
And David, the whole point is arguably we are well down that slippery slope. There's no unfounded hysteria happening. In 2022, The Atlantic ran an article that deemed the Catholic Rosary a symbol of religious radicalism. Right. Again, we know that the FBI somehow sort of promoted the idea that Catholic faith was connected directly to violent extremists. After the Nashville shooting, somehow Christians were to blame for it. It is a very, very real persecution
they
here.
live in their own
part
world,
because
bro.
the slow drip, the benign impact of the media is actually quite horrific, because that drip is what shatters rocks.
So I want to take kind of the 30,000-foot strategic view of what just played out. And I get it. I agree that this is part of that secularist movement of the liberal progressives, the left, and Biden's play. But if you look at the events that began really about last Thursday to where we are today, the proclamation of Transgender Day of Visibility, the celebration of Cesar Chavez Day, which was proclaimed in 2013 in a similar fashion, what you're seeing is a master class in gaslighting for the response. Think about it by the numbers. There are about 1.6 million Americans who self-identify as trans. However,
Cesar Chavez Day. What the fuck does this have to do with Cesar Chavez? I don't understand what Cesar Chavez has to do with like the destruction of like anything. They're about to say workers' rights are anti-Christian. It just doesn't make sense, because like, first of all, as far as like Cesar Chavez Day goes, you know who else celebrated Cesar Chavez? Motherfucking Tucker Carlson. I still remember. Tucker Carlson, I remember cutting propaganda about how Cesar Chavez was like beating undocumented migrants.
However, 67% of 30 million people identify as Christian in America. And if you take from that the number
ironic, because I think he was a Catholic too.
of people who celebrate Easter, shall we say, more openly, it's about 37%. That's 122 million. So who are they playing to? They're actually playing this for their base, for the reaction. And I think we need to put context together. It's true that they've had this attack. These are the same people that go after kids, saying you can't put a religious symbol on an Easter egg in an art contest, but yet they will glorify the Virgin Mary being dipped in urine. It's not about art. It is about their attack to secularize, to demonize, to, again, take us apart as Americans and have us at each other's throats. And I think when we do that, we take away their power to overly influence people. And I think that's the context that helps us do that.
Well, obviously, I agree with all of this, but for someone who is, I'm a gay woman, for the part of the audience that might not know this yet.
Uh-oh. Watch out. Dude, are you going to glance over the watch that he said? I don't know how to respond to any of this. Like, they're having this conversation as though this is a deliberate attempt to like destroy Christianity or some shit. How do you respond to anything that they're saying? You're responding to their delusions. They're cutting commentary off of their own right-wing hallucinations. That's the problem here. So much of this is so much of American political commentary is just about like responding to the funniest hallucinations that a Republican has had that day, on any given day, really. It's weird. Why does different mean attack? That's the part I don't understand. Yeah, there's nothing going on here that like attacks Christianity. It's like pretty funny that they're talking about like the death of American values while Biden is like running around with fucking Easter bunnies on the side. Yeah, Christian Americans are weird because they're massively in the driving seat in terms of political power, and yet they're constantly painting themselves as the victims. Oh, always. It's just paranoia. It's paranoia about like the smallest sliver of like things that are not even inconveniencing that you've basically whipped yourself into a frenzy over and have decided is inconveniencing to you. So I don't know how to respond to it. It's kind of like, you know how my haters will like clip chimp something and then like go off on it and basically live in their own universe? I liken this to like they could basically fucking look at a Discord message and be like, Hassan literally hates eating apples, and I could be eating an apple in the process and they still wouldn't believe it. They'd be like, ha, you're just eating this apple to prove us wrong, to like somehow hide the truth about how much you hate apples. Something as silly as that, right? I'm using a very silly example. Basically, that's what Fox News is doing for like the entire Democratic Party or the entire project of democracy, just liberalism in general. This is all they do. They're like, oh, the Biden administration is deliberately doing Trans Day of Visibility on Easter this year because they want to fucking kill Christian people. And then you just have to sit there and listen to these people like hallucinate en masse and act like what they have to say has any value whatsoever. There's no amount of like course correction that can change these guys' opinions on the matter because they've made up their minds already. They've already politically polarized. And now we're living in a world where like they do legitimately believe this shit. And it's actually happening.
What is problematic, and we also heard Caitlyn Jenner's response to this, is that it was obscene. You get tired of being somebody's fetish. You get tired of being the pawn to be used to divide. So I agree with David in this regard. This has nothing to do with transgenders. As a matter of fact, they're being used. They're being used to divide Americans. It's like if you walk into a bar and scream something about someone's...
Like they're doing that right now. Yeah. Like that's what they're doing. Yeah, nobody gives a fuck about Trans Day of Visibility, including the Biden administration. Let's be real.
Mom, you're looking for a fight, and they're looking for a fight. They want you talking about this instead of the border, instead of the economy, instead of crime that is increasing. They want you to look at other Americans as the problem. Well, none of us are the problem. That's their goal. And I would suggest certainly that transgenders are probably looking at this thinking, we don't need this. This does not help us. This does not help us. We like Easter too. This is an unforced error. It's unnecessary. And of course, it's the combination of things that have happened. It's the environment. It's what we notice has occurred. But again, I would argue that it is a convenient dividing line when you've got Americans who are Christian versus perhaps Jews versus gays and lesbians versus transgenders. Enough of this. We have...
Yeah, she knows all about... When I want to think about, like, what is best for trans people, I go to Fox News and listen to a woman who say transgenders.
Families, we have lives we need to live, no matter what our skin color, how we identify. We've got to be able to look to the future, and these individuals are looking for a fist fight in a bar. We can't give it to them. So I think we're united in that regard, to say the least.
Well, and I do think that part of the conversation is, and I think much like the transgender community got caught up in the storm, so did Muslim families.
Yes.
I mean, think about it. He's flexing so he doesn't have to pick the Christians on that day. But that doesn't help their cause either, because what happens when they're not his fetish, as you say? I mean, that's even hard to say. It feels so wrong because it is. We shouldn't be anybody's fetish, not black people, not Hispanic people. We should just be Americans.
What do you know? What a concept.
Yeah. And every American should celebrate Easter. Yeah, we're Americans. We all celebrate Easter. Fuck you.
Faulkner.
All right, guys, up next. Hey, everyone, I'm Emily Campagna.